Hello everybody, this is Maurice Ross, and I want to talk to you about some important legal matters. This is my legal rant of the day. Today there was a horrible shooting in a church in Minnesota, a Catholic church, by a young white man. And this raises issues concerning why these shootings continue to happen in America, these tragic events that we see all too often. And I must say, blame must be placed with the Republican Party, the GOP, and the Supreme Court. The Second Amendment has been widely misunderstood and misapplied, even by the Supreme Court. The famous Heller decision recognized, really for the first time, that the Second Amendment provides an individual right to possess and bear arms. But in the Heller decision, the Supreme Court made it clear that the right to bear arms was not without limitations, that the Second Amendment was not absolute, and it did not intend to disturb reasonable gun control measures, especially those that have a history of enforcement in the states and at the federal level. For example, the Supreme Court has made clear in the Heller case that it was not intending to change laws prohibiting the possession of guns by people that are mentally ill, who have felony convictions, or who are otherwise not capable of making rational decisions about when to use a gun. The Supreme Court in Heller also said it didn't intend to disturb reasonable measures to protect the public from safety where guns are in possession in public places, sensitive places such as courthouses, airports, stadiums, concert halls, and the like. And yet, despite the fact that the Heller case very clearly left broad room for regulation of guns at the federal and state level, the Republican Party has blocked at every turn reasonable gun control legislation, both at the federal level and at the state level. The Republican Party takes an absolute position regarding gun rights, and the MAGA base, the Trump base, believe that the Second Amendment allows them to possess guns and use them wherever and whenever. They want to have guns in our schools, they want to have guns in our parks, they want to have guns wherever these people go. They want to have the right to have them in bars, in restaurants, theaters. That's just not how the Second Amendment was supposed to work. Now, the Supreme Court, in some subsequent decisions, the Bruin decision, the Rahimi decision, has upheld some restrictions on gun control, but eliminated many others. They overturned a New York law that prohibited the use of firearms, the carrying of firearms in public without specific licenses. And in New York City, where there's always been a problem with guns and murders, that law made entire sense, but the Supreme Court overturned it. The Supreme Court, by the same token, has still upheld some laws concerning restrictions on possession of guns in public places such as courthouses and so forth. But the Heller case made clear that reasonable gun control measures were not unconstitutional, that the Second Amendment was not absolute, the right to bear arms was not absolute. And yet, the Republican Party at every turn has blocked reasonable gun control, and the Supreme Court, unfortunately, has also issued limitations on gun control that I think are inconsistent with the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is widely misunderstood and misapplied. Yes, you have the right to defend yourself, but you don't have to have an AK-47 or a machine gun or a grenade to defend yourself. And there's no right to possess weapons of military grade to defend yourself. The Second Amendment doesn't mean that. The Second Amendment is widely misapplied even by the courts, by the lower courts and by the Supreme Court. And unfortunately, until we have reasonable gun control measures, these events, these horrible events like those we see in Minnesota today, will continue to happen. Reasonable gun control doesn't mean taking away your guns. We're not coming for the guns of law-abiding citizens, but by the same token, no one needs a machine gun. No one needs an AK-47. No one needs an automatic rifle to defend yourself. And the fact of the matter is, people need to understand what the statistics show. Guns are rarely used in self-defense in this country. In fact, this almost never happens. And yet, the MAGA Second Amendment extremists somehow believe that guns are the answer to violence in our country. That's wrong. In most European countries where we have very low rates of murders and homicides and gun violence, there are very high levels of restrictions on gun ownership. In Denmark, in Switzerland, in Sweden, and really throughout Europe, gun ownership is drastically limited, and the homicide rates are drastically lower than in this country. Clearly, the answer to all of these horrible instances of mass shootings is that we need more gun control. We need it. The problem is the guns. And it's not just mental health. The problem is access to guns are far too great in this country. There should be a right to defend yourself, but that doesn't mean people should have the right to have all the ammunition they want. They should have the right to have machine guns, automatic weapons. We don't need that. None of us need that for self-defense. In fact, those types of weapons are counterproductive. We need, as a society, to rethink Second Amendment rights. The Supreme Court, the conservative Supreme Court, has gone way too far in limiting those rights. But Congress and state legislatures still can play a very productive role in enforcing reasonable gun regulation. Unfortunately, the Republican Party blocks reasonable gun regulations at every turn. The NRA and the gun lobby provides literally millions of dollars of campaign contributions to right-wing Republicans. And Republicans are beholden to these donors. And unfortunately, money talks in legislation these days. Since the Citizen United case was decided by the Supreme Court, which really leads to unlimited contributions of soft money, money tends to dominate the discussion. But we need to think clearly as a society. We can't let the Republicans dominate this discussion. Democrats and progressives need to stand up for reasonable gun control. Gun control is the answer. Nothing more and nothing less.